All right, we are about to have a conversation with Jen Dayton. I'm just waiting for her to hop on into our virtual space. And while I do that, I thought it would be a good time to introduce you to her. So Jen is a queer neurodivergent stoner, nature lover, snake mom, and integrative healer who helps people overcome the fear and anxiety that's holding them back from chasing their most meaningful dreams. And I highly recommend Jen's coaching. I've had a couple sessions with them and I found them very, very powerful and very helpful. Okay, they are a huge nervous system nerd with a background in massage and structural integration. And last year, they became certified in Integrative Change Work by the Ethical Coaching Collective. And I'm really excited to see what's in store for today's call. We are going to talk a little bit about the nervous system. We're going to be talking about getting out of fight or flight and then looking at first getting out of the fight or flight and then looking at the situation and how you can change and just how important it is to get out of that survival mechanism first before you can make different choices and take different action steps to change your circumstances. And we're going to be talking about mindset work and how talking mindset stuff and thinking is great, but that at a certain point you get to a wall where you need something deeper, and that deeper lies within your body. It lies within somatics, and that takes your healing even deeper. So these are some of the things that we have talked about that we want to bring into this conversation. But as always, here at Openly Spoken, we flow with whatever is present. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Jen. I love that. That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already.
Perfect. We entered the time portal, baby, where it just time is illusory. It doesn't exist.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen within your relationships, your work, and most importantly, with the relationship with yourself. In this podcast, we talk about all things self-love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, and more. Hi, I'm your host, Celia Antonio, and I'm a women's sexuality and self-love coach, a mindfulness expert, and your cheerleader for your most grounded and expansive self-expression. You can connect with me on Instagram at selfexpressedbabe, and for all of my guest episodes, there will always be links in the show notes so that you can find them online. I give my deepest thanks to you for being here and spending your precious time with me today. Now let's begin our journey.
Yay!
Yay, perfect. We're recording. Hi, Jen.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes, it's really good to see you again.
Same. Yeah.
I'm just going to adjust my window because I realize my camera's up here and you're down here. So 1 second. This is a lot easier on Zoom to position the screen in the right spot. So right before recording, as I was waiting for you to get on, I was recording your bio. And then I opened up your Instagram, and I just want to add that Jen is 50% healing baddie, 40% goblin, and 10% existential depression. I loved it.
Yeah, that about sums it up. Thank you for seeing me.
Yeah. So what's it like to be you today?
Oh, I love that question. What's it like to be me today? I'm feeling really great, actually. I got coached yesterday, and I got coached about this session.
Oh.
And it was really beautiful, and I'm feeling super excited about it now.
Nice. Yeah, I love that you got that support. And I love hearing when coaches and even therapists get their own coaches and therapists. And I love your coaching. I
I
mentioned
love
that in the
working with
bio.
you. Oh,
Yeah.
yay.
Okay,
Yes, no,
so oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that I find that, coaches often have some of the best appreciation for coaching. So I love working with other coaches as a giver and a receiver. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is fun. I feel like I guess like layman or the normie that is not a coach might approach certain things that your coach asks you to do and think like, you want me to do what? You want me to feel a blob and tell you what color and shape it is? Like what? But a coach is like, oh yeah, we got this. Here's what this
Yes.
is. It's prickly. It's green.
Yes. Yes. That's such a good point. I do feel like there's a little bit of like, I love just leaning into the weird. And when people are immediately on board with that, I'm like, yes, 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 let's go. That being said, I am ever growing in my ability to bridge the gap between people who are not quite ready to name a blob yet. And that's cool too. We can have fun regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I say I love that a lot. So I'm going to call myself out every time I say it because I don't want to keep saying that every time, but I do love that.
I love that you love that.
Okay, so I know we have a couple of notes from our previous conversation where we were wondering what we would chat about on this podcast. And I was actually just reading one of your Instagram posts, the one where you were talking about how you posted this photo of yourself when you were younger in a bathing suit and you photoshopped it. And I wanted to bring that in because it kind of relates to, you mentioned the fawn response in that post and how that's not really mentioned. And I think another important thing that post touches on is how they're like these boxes that we think we need to fit into when really we don't.
Ooh.
And like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm currently going up against that all the time. Like I have not shaved my underarms in like 6 months, and that's something I like never would have done years ago,
Yes.
because it's like this box. I thought like, oh, because I'm a woman, I have to be like absolutely bald from the neck down. And it's fucking exhausting.
It is fucking exhausting. Yeah, I that's the thing I think about the most now that I've let go a lot of the I was going to say self-care, but it's grooming. A lot of the grooming that women are expected to do. It's hours upon hours every week. And I don't think a lot of men who are just people who aren't used to doing that realize the amount of time and effort that goes into it. But the farther and farther away I've gotten from having that just like default expectation for myself, the more I look back and I'm like, that was crazy. That was crazy that I did all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we have bodies and bodies grow hair.
I know. And same. I think that, letting my body hair grow was definitely one of those boxes I unchecked, and there's dozens of them. The post talked about, weight in particular, right? We have, especially growing up, I imagine like as millennials, we grew up in the heroin chic era, the low-ride pants with the flat belly and all the diet culture, and just it was drilled into our brains from the time that we were quite young.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that post I talked about how, gosh, I must have been, I don't know, like 19 or 20 when I took that picture of myself, and it was a shapewear swimsuit. And I photoshopped my belly to look slimmer. There were several photos of myself from that day that I photoshopped. And it just felt like there wasn't another option, like letting people know that my belly was soft, even though I was with people there in real life, but I wasn't going to put it on the internet. Yeah. I was absolutely terrified. In hindsight, I don't think I thought of this at the time, but in hindsight, I think the difference between being with friends in my bathing suit and posting a picture of myself online of my bathing suit is just like the wider cultural opinion. Like,
Yeah.
Again, like that's that like social expectation of like being skinny. It's like, well, maybe my friends can accept my lower belly, but the whole world doesn't need to know my business. I'll just be chubby in secret,
Yeah. 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 It's so heartbreaking how so many of us experience that. And it's like totally
Yeah.
unnecessary.
Yeah. So the fawn response, I like that we're getting into some of the like neuroscience of this. But for those who don't know, you probably heard of like fight or flight, but then there's also freeze and fawn. And freeze would be like, that moment where you have like deer in the headlights and kind of all your thoughts go blank and you don't really know what to do, or you just feel stuck or confused. But fawn is more like people pleasing or, trying to live up to expectations. It's about minimizing yourself. It's about hiding yourself. It's about shame. It's about making sure that people don't know you're not up to par in these ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm so passionate about, whenever I first started coaching, I really wanted to talk about unlearning people pleasing because that's where a lot of my clients are starting from. But I think the most beautiful thing about it all is just like seeing who you are when you aren't forcing yourself into these boxes.
Yeah.
What a beautiful process.
Yeah. Yeah. Super beautiful. Because you get to know yourself almost like for the first time.
Yeah. It's weird to do as an adult especially if you're surrounded by people who maybe had a more secure upbringing,
Yeah. And it can also be very scary because like the world exists in like a very like, it's like you have to be a man or a woman and you have to like get married, have kids, be monogamous. Like there's all these like subtle rules of like, yeah, but you have to fit into these rules. And so when you start to melt your freeze or you start to come out of fawn and you realize like, I actually don't agree with all these like things that society tells me I need to do. It's fucking scary.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
Yeah. You have to feel the feelings that you were ignoring, and you have to be willing to be disliked at the end of the day. It's like you're always going to risk like letting the real you out and somebody seeing it and going, ew, and that's their business. Some people hate ranch and some people drown everything they eat in it, so to each their own.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the prize at the end of that is then you actually have people around you who like actually love you for you.
Yes, if you're a ranch lover, you shouldn't be eating raw veggies just because, just because somebody said you shouldn't eat ranch. Like, eat your ranch, girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm currently going through this kind of with deciding to not have kids. I always thought I would have kids. It was kind of
big
like,
one.
Yeah, it's a big one. And it's like, like most girls, I played with dolls since age, I don't know, 6, maybe even younger. I'm also the oldest of a few siblings. And I also do have really strong maternal instincts. But when I look around at the world, I'm like, nah, not here. Not in this fucked up place. I mean, the world is beautiful. The world is gorgeous and beautiful. I just personally have been struggling with, the fact that we're human animals and we're primal and we're wild and we're multifaceted. And yet we're here existing in these like games of like, go to work, have money to pay for water. And like, just so many things. Yes. I don't even know where to start.
I 1000% feel you on that. I feel like once you become aware of that, and if you're one of those people who's like, I see that, I don't like it, I don't really want to participate in that, and yet here I am, got to get by. I don't know how to build a fort in the woods, so I'm going to try to earn money to buy water. So if you find yourself in that place, it's just exhausting and overwhelming to get through the daily grind of earning enough money to live and like making sure that you're taking care of yourself and, keeping up with your social support and yada, yada, yada. It's like adding not only just the labor, like the domestic labor of taking care of a child, which is significant, but also the whole emotional burden. And I don't mean that derogatorily, but just the emotional weight of being responsible for another being and like wanting them to be mentally healthy in a world that we're paddling upstream to stay healthy. So yeah, it's a huge task parenting a child in this world, especially as somebody who is mindful of trauma and, the human nature. Ooh, I don't blame you at all for seeing that and being like, no, thank you. Just
yeah.
No.
It's been tough though, because it's like popped the bubble of like who I thought I was and the life I thought I was going to live. Like it's just like, it's been insane.
Yeah. If I may, like, what is it about, you mentioned that this is about like, this thing feels like you're defying some of the boxes. So what are some of those boxes? I'm sure there are other people who feel them too.
Yeah, I love that. I would say the first box is like, just because you have maternal instincts equals I need to be a mom. Because I see a lot of people who have chosen to be childless and they're like, oh yeah, I just don't have maternal instincts. And like, I have maternal instincts, but I don't think that's enough. Like, that's not reason enough.
Yeah, I'm sure you would make a great mom, and that doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah. What are other boxes? I guess just because I have a womb, I need to be procreating. I need to be like barefoot and pregnant, which no thanks.
Yeah.
I feel like those are the only ones, perhaps. Oh, maybe also, that I'm married and it's like, having children is like the next step, apparently.
Yeah, it really all just kind of revolves around like, as women, we exist. Our role in society is to bear the babies, and otherwise, what are we good for? Yeah. But yeah, like, you and I, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this could think of 1,000 wonderful things about you as a full faceted human being. You have a wonderful life without being a mother. And so, we know on a logical level that that's not true. And yet we kind of operate from these societal rules that exist way deep in the back of our brains.
Yeah. Because that narrative is everywhere. It's in it's in the Disney movies we watched when we were children. It's in the dolls we played with when we were children. Like,
and here's where I think people get caught up is because you can say, oh, it's in all the movies we grew up with, and I see that now. But then there's the reality of, one of these days you're going to have to respond to your aunt at Thanksgiving when she says, why aren't you and your husband getting pregnant yet? You have to decide what you're going to say in that moment. And I think that people, whether they realize it or not, are, sometimes they realize it and sometimes I think we don't. We're just like unconsciously avoiding those interactions because they're uncomfortable and we don't want to face people's disappointment in us. Like maybe we can digest the fact that they have it, but we don't want them to look us in our face and say, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Essentially, even if they don't say what's wrong with you, that's what's behind it. What's wrong with you that you don't want to have kids?
Yeah. And that's where the freeze response can come back in. Fawning, perhaps.
Yeah. We talk about them like they're these separate things, but they're often so blended, right? And I think fawn and freeze are often quite good friends. They are for me anyway.
Yeah. Same here.
It's like if somebody says something rude, I'm like, zip. Oh, I'm trying to get better at being like, what do you mean by that? Or, just not going into immediate freeze. But yeah, fight is the last thing on the list for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I freeze when someone is angry. Like if someone is like yelling, like at the last place I lived at, I parked in front of a garage, and the person whose garage that was like banging on my door. And then when I opened it, was just like yelling at me, and I could not even respond. And that's how I would get. This was 2 years ago, and I haven't had an experience where someone's been yelling at me. So I think maybe I would respond a little bit differently now. But all through my life, like if someone would scream at me, I would just be like, and then when they leave, I would just start sobbing. And it feels
Yes.
so like disempowering, because it's just like I want to be grounded. I want to,
Yes.
be able to let the person be angry without making it mean that I'm unsafe, because their anger is about them. It has nothing to do with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, but you don't think of that in the moment. Like,
Yeah, you don't.
I think that implicit in the fawn response and sometimes freeze is like, you're essentially like trying to get them to not hurt you by being pleasing and ameliorating. You're like, it's like if going along with the serial killer until you can find a way to escape, so that they don't hurt you. You're biding your time. So yeah, your freeze response was a version of that too. It's like, if I just don't say anything, maybe he'll go away. And then I can cry in private. Yeah. So it's supernatural. My most potent experiences of freezing were like in sexual violence situations.
Mm.
And I remember going to my therapist and being like, I was like, for the following days, I was just like sort of stuck in this state of, I needed to believe that it was my fault. Like that, because I needed to believe that I was not completely out of control in that situation. Right. So I was like, I shouldn't have been there. I froze up. I should have said something. I should have done something. I should have reacted differently. And, I don't think I thought of it this way at the time, but in hindsight, that reaction was me just trying to be like, there's absolutely no way that I was out of control of me freezing up in that situation. I didn't want to believe that. But then whenever my therapist insisted on like telling me how the nervous system works, and that in that split second, we don't get a choice, like our, some part of our brain that happens faster than we can consciously be aware of makes the decision of what's safest. It, you don't have control over that. Maybe over time you can change those responses over time, but that time I didn't. And my body did what it thought it needed to do to keep me safe. And the moment that kind of like sunk in for me, big wave of tears. Just, it's scary to think that in a life-threatening situation, you don't get to use the part of your brain that you use all the time for problem solving and logic and, your strengths, the things that you think, oh, this is what makes me and who I am and how I operate,
Yeah. It's almost like we use a more instinctual animal side of our brain.
It is. It is very animal. I think remembering that helps me have more compassion, because I wouldn't like yell at my pet for getting startled, but that's essentially the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love how you had that realization of like your body was just doing what it needed to do to keep you safe, and that your brain was also essentially doing the same thing, like that it's like a split-second decision for your safety. I feel like that can help a lot of people just unshame their nervous system reaction, because I know for me personally, like with the freezing, like I'd shame myself all the time about it, like because it would even come up in non-threatening situations. Like school presentations, for example.
Yes.
And it's
That's
so
such a great
frustrating.
point.
You're like, why can't I just speak with confidence?
Yeah. Oh, and of course, you're not alone on that one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the people who love speaking in front of a crowd are a rare and special breed. But yeah, I think that for most people, or at least like the idea behind this split second decision, the animal thing, is that we have like an instinct, like an innate intelligence that we evolved to have. And so whenever it misfires, we'll say, or like we have a response that in hindsight didn't seem helpful or appropriate, that was like the next layer of guilt for me. Was like, is my innate are my innate abilities wrong and broken? And when we grow up in homes with emotionally immature parents, or we've endured trauma, be it mental, physical, emotional, our picker doesn't get broken, but it gets out of tune sometimes.
Yeah, because we're mirroring what our parents were doing.
Yeah, exactly. We learned, it's like somebody taught us bad form in lifting weights. And so what I think is cool about this, like the nervous system coaching, is you're retuning, without the guilt and shame and, pressure to get it right all the time. It's just this understanding of like, I am an animal and I'm not powerless to my animal instincts, but I also don't have ultimate control over them. It's some messy spot in between.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if this is a totally separate conversation, but I think there's also that extra added layer of how in our culture, whenever sexual assault does happen, it's usually like people will look at the victim and be like, well, what was she wearing? What did she say? Was she being flirty? And it's so prevalent that, I've also experienced sexual assault, and I immediately just internally went to that place of like, maybe I was being too open and too nice, and like, maybe I gave him the wrong signals or something like that. And it's just so prevalent in our society that like we are even trained to blame ourselves.
Yeah. And then that like preys on the part of the brain that wants to believe that you were in control of the situation, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned in our previous chat about talking about getting somebody out of the fire, like out of the triggered nervous system response, first and foremost, before going into kind of like take different action steps or take different choices. And I would love to invite you to speak on that.
Yeah, I got that analogy from Melissa Tiers, my coaching teacher. She says, you get people out of the burning building before you try to figure out what started the fire. And I thought it was such an interesting take. We talked about this a little bit too, because often, like, I think a cultural bias is approaching problems from the top down, right? We need to really figure it out and understand what's going on. And then we can take the steps to resolve it. And so what this looks like in coaching sessions is people will come in and they'll be like, well, this thing happened and now I don't know what to do because and I need you to help me figure out how to blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I love you so much. But before we figure that out, let's take some breaths. And nobody wants to hear that, right? Nobody wants to believe that that's going to be the thing that fixes it, because they are convinced that, because that's what happens whenever you go into fight or flight, like biologically, right? Like certain parts of your brain light up and certain parts of your brain turn off. And so the part of your brain that's able to recognize this might not necessarily be the most helpful step to take right now, offline, not functioning.
Okay.
But then what happens whenever I insist on, getting out of the burning building first? will do some sort of nervous system exercise to get out of fight or flight. And then once they're out of fight or flight and they're in a more balanced state of mind, then all the things that they thought they needed to do don't seem so huge. It's the next steps seem clearer. And even if they don't know exactly what the next step is, they can feel a little bit more at peace about the process of finding that out, you know?
That all just made me realize how common it is for most of us to be in a triggered nervous system response all the time. Because collectively, we have a problem with just stopping and pausing and breathing.
Yes. Hustle culture, grind culture, bragging about your 60-hour work week and sleeping 4 hours a night. Like, I'm not here for it. Not at all.
Yeah. No. I wonder if, I'm not sure if anyone listening has no idea what fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are. But just in case, do you want to touch on each of them briefly and share?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you'll often hear the like primitive being chased by a tiger example, you know? So if you were an indigenous human and you encountered a wild animal, a predator, you would have a physiological response immediately. Like you have that split second and your brain starts redirecting blood flow. Your digestive system turns off because you don't need to be digesting food while you're running from danger. You need blood in your limbs, you know? You need your visual focus to be very sharp and forward in the direction that you need to go, right? And in that split second, your brain's going to make a decision about, can I fight this tiger? Do I need to get the hell away? Where can I go to? If it has too much information and doesn't know what to do, you might freeze, like a short circuit kind of situation. And usually in the case of people, not so much a tiger. I feel like fawn is more of a human social construct, but if it were a human who you were feeling threatened by, you might try to please or ameliorate them in order to prevent them from harming you. Your nervous system, or like your body, is doing a similar thing in all those cases. It's always turning the digestive system off. It's always turning the... Is that what it is? I thought it was your cat. Are you okay?
No, I left them out. It's very gentle, but it's still going a little bit. Freeze response.
Yeah. I saw it happening and I was like, her cat must be about to jump right in front of the camera. No, that was the whole building shaking.
Could you see it behind me? Could you see anything like
that? Yeah, that's why I assumed it was like your desk moving, you know? Just like the whole camera.
I'm glad the internet didn't disconnect us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did it stop?
Yeah, it did.
Like it stopped.
It stopped.
Okay, cool. Hope everything in your house is cool.
I think it was gentle enough. I always get a little shaken afterwards, though. I'm like, will there be an aftershock?
Yeah. Are you in the Bay Area or are you in Southern California?
I'm in Southern California. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm right next to a mountain range, and I used to live by the beach, and there were not nearly as many earthquakes. I guess they never traveled far enough to the coast because the coast is like 40-ish miles away.
Yeah, then you get all that sand. I'm sure it helps absorb a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so you were saying how the fawn response is more of like a interacting with humans. It's more of like social, because we won't be like, oh, here's a steak, little tiger. Please don't eat me.
I mean, if it were a dog, you might throw him a sausage or something, but yeah.
Yeah, or like a wolf.
But then I was saying, yeah. Okay, but in all of them, whether you're fight, flight, freeze, fawn, you're almost always like having a very similar response in your body where, all your blood flow goes to your limbs and away from your digestive system. It's going away from the front part of your brain, which is where you're doing like math problems and logic, like linear thinking and even like speech. And then most of your blood flow is going to the back part of your brain, the reptilian brain, that's just reflexes, instincts, simple functions.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like your visual focus is going to be very honed forward. So regardless of whether you're in fight or flight or freeze or fawn, gratefully the ways to get yourself back to a regulated state are pretty similar. And I think that might explain a little bit too of why they can blend so much, like we were saying, like freeze and fawn can blend together, and flight and freeze can blend together. Flight and fawn can blend together. Because they're all just kind of like four sides of the same three-dimensional shape that has four sides. A pyramid? Four sides of the same pyramid.
Yeah, so you just said that because they're all similar, they all have similar ways of getting you, like you can apply similar methods to get you out. What are some of those methods?
One I use a lot in sessions is EFT tapping. And I recommend that one a lot because it's really easy to like find how to do it online, and it's been studied pretty well, shown to help reduce heart rate and help people feel more calm and at peace. But it's essentially just like you're tapping on acupressure points on your face and your chest, and you can just do the like physical part, or there's also a talking component, kind of like affirmations, essentially just acknowledging how you're feeling and agreeing to love and accept yourself no matter what you're feeling. And most feelings can pass in about 90 seconds. So the tapping protocol, you can do it for a minute and a half and feel much better. Same thing with just like, one thing I personally do a lot is like shake, just get up, jump around, shake my body. And that one goes back to like, if you were being chased, if an antelope were being chased by a tiger, you probably know this, but for anybody who doesn't, if an antelope were being chased by a tiger, my geography is probably very wrong here. If a big cat were chasing a prey animal and the prey animal froze, for example, to like play dead, and the tiger walked away for a second and it got an opportunity to run away. It would get to a safe place, it would run away, and then once it was sure it was safe and the tiger wasn't around anymore, its whole body would twitch and shake. And what that's doing is, when you go into the fight, flight, freeze response, I mentioned all of the physiological responses like the blood flow, that creates potential energy. Like if you were to pull a rubber band back, that's potential energy. You let go, it flings.
Yeah.
So all that shaking is letting the potential energy out of your body. That's what emotions are. That's, so doing the tapping, doing the shaking, these help you not only like release the potential energy, but release the emotional experience you're having associated with that potential energy. So it's like, oh, this seems kind of silly. How is this going to help me stop feeling anxious? But it's science, baby. Don't question it.
Yeah, that's actually how I felt with the tapping when I first did it. I'm like, what is this? This is like some hocus pocus coach thing. But if you stay with it, like it eventually works. And I love how you mentioned that you could just do the tapping, because I do find just the tapping to be really great, especially like right under the eye. It for some reason like always feels really good for me. Just like
my favorite's right in the chest. Sometimes I'll just do the chest. Yeah. But I like that everybody has a little bit of a different like favorite spot, So you don't have to do it like perfectly the way they teach it every time. My teacher, Melissa, teaches a like shortened version of it, and it still works. I don't know the perfectly like the science behind why it works, but it does. Hocus pocus magic. Speaking of weird hocus pocus magic, I'm glad I have this rock in my hand, because bilateral stimulation is another super weird one. Like If
Oh,
you've ever heard, have you heard of EMDR therapy?
I have. I have. I've never experienced it though.
Um,
But I heard it
I
like replicates like what your eyes are doing in REM sleep. Is that right?
Something like that. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think the person who discovered it was watching a tennis match and their eyes were going back and forth. But
It's just like
the idea
watching a
is
tennis match and like doing trauma healing, or how does that happen?
in EMDR, there's like this specific protocol, right? Where you're talking
Yeah,
about certain things and then you're doing the thing. But this just bilateral stimulation on its own is, a technique that can help your brain like process and integrate information, right? So that can include going on a walk. It can include passing something back and forth between your hands. It can be listening to bilateral stimulation music,
I
binaural
love
beats or
that
whatever.
when it goes
Yeah.
from ear to ear. It kind of like tickles my brain, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. You'll see people online being like, neurodivergent people, this is so soothing. That's why. It's because there's something about like lighting up here, lighting up here, lighting up here, lighting up here that your brain can't hold on to the negative thought that you were ruminating on.
Those are some
And
great
then
tips.
there's one more that I think I've taught it to you too, that I like teaching to people because this is like the by far quickest, easiest one, where you just like, because I mentioned, how you got the focal vision, you're looking forward, right? You got to run away from that tiger. So if you just like focus on your peripheral vision and let your vision go blurry and become aware of the space behind you and to the sides of you, immediately shifting you out of the fight, flight, freeze response and into the more balanced one.
Mm-hmm.
Weird, crazy science works. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you mention how your vision is forward and you're in the reptilian brain, I think about, for some reason, driving. It's
Yeah.
like driving usually brings out in us just that like immediate urge to yell when someone's cutting us off, because we probably are in our reptilian brain. It's such a dangerous like activity that we're doing.
It is pretty wild. One thing that I think is cool, though, I use this analogy in my sessions sometimes, is like checking your mirrors, because yes, like you might be like this most of the time while you're driving, but especially if you're upset when you're driving, you're probably just going to be looking forward at the brake lights in front of you that you're pissed off at. But whenever you're calmly driving, you're checking your mirrors, right? You're looking to the side, you're looking to the other
So
side,
true.
you're looking up, looking behind you.
Yeah.
But then the moment that you get pissed off, you're not looking behind you. You're looking at the car you're pissed at. Focused.
Yeah. Sounds like nervous system exercises need to be taught at the DMV.
Everyone
Especially here
needs
in
to
LA.
learn.
People drive like sociopaths here.
Houston is pretty bad too. Yeah. Oh, yes. I live in, or I grew up in like a suburb of Houston, and I remember my first time driving into the city as a teenager. Terrifying. Absolutely scarred me for life.
Yeah. I think part of that is like, I don't know if we're getting off topic, but I think part of that is when we're driving, it's so easy to look at the cars in front of us and next to us and behind us and see them as cars and not see them as humans with beating hearts and with bellies. And
Such a good point.
Yeah, I think it's obviously forgotten. Otherwise, we wouldn't be driving the way that we drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing a biker online who had made a video of just showing the difference in how people in cars treat her versus people like pedestrians and people on bikes. And it's insane, the audacity of the people in the cars. Yeah, I think same goes for online too, right?
Yes.
Anytime that we feel this like shield of, I'm not fully present as a human right now. I'm a little bit machine.
Yeah.
We let the nasty parts come out.
Yeah, especially if it's like an anonymous forum like Reddit. People are mean on that platform. Because there's no consequence if no one knows it's. I mean, technically there is a consequence, because I think when you're being nasty to somebody, that you are receiving it, because you're hearing the thoughts, you're feeling those angry feelings, and like your nervous system is taking all of that in. And
Yeah.
I think that is the like unseen consequence of that.
Well, I also think like a nervous system that was healthy in the first place wouldn't be saying nasty stuff. So if anything, they're just like perpetuating whatever is going on inside of them that caused them to say that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm just looking at my notes, and oh, great. Okay. So this piece with Emily Nagowski, how she talks about brakes, accelerators. She also has this other book where she talks about completing stress cycles. And that reminds me of that piece you shared with the antelope or prey animal. I forget which animal it was. I think we started with antelope and changed it.
Any prey animal will do. I just don't want to like conflate. I don't know which animals belong in which continent.
We want to be accurate.
That wasn't sure. Some biology major is going to get up in there and be like, antelopes don't live where tigers live or something. So I just thought I would keep it general. But yeah, antelope, sure.
Yeah, and how the triggered nervous system response creates a lot of kinetic energy or potential energy. Is kinetic energy potential energy? It's been a while since I've been in a physics class.
I think that one is an umbrella for the other, but I think that, yes, I think that they're related. I do think that potential energy is kinetic energy, but it's potential kinetic energy.
Shall we be Googling this?
Clearly.
Difference?
I'm a life coach, not a scientist. Okay, but what I think potential energy is, it's the potential for kinetic energy, right?
Okay. I think so.
Kinetic energy lying in waiting.
Okay, Google says the main difference between potential and kinetic energy is that one is the energy of what can be, and one is the energy of what is. So potential is when something is kinetic, still but has energy, and kinetic is when it's in motion, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Kinetic energy is energy in motion. Yes.
Kinetic energy is after you let go of the rubber band.
Okay. And then potential energy is what does it say? Stationary. That's interesting, because like when our nervous systems are activated and when we're in freeze response, like we can seem like we're stationary and all these things are happening inside. Yeah. And most times, like we're not taught nervous system practices in school. Most times we kind of like bottle that in and hold that in. So I guess we turn that energy into something that's stagnant. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, because you're right. Potential energy, it's not something just sitting on the counter, right? It's stationary, but it's waiting to pop at any moment, you know?
Yeah.
And so whenever we're in freeze mode, we might be sitting still, but there's turbulence inside, you know? There's turbulence that needs to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
it can come out by yelling, or, you know, like I'm sure we have a zillion, you know, coping mechanisms we could name, or involuntary responses, but not until you actually like shake it off, feel the feeling, like integrate, like really allow your body and mind to experience and integrate that experience, will the inner turbulence be gone.
Yeah. And then once that inner turbulence is gone, you can come out of that lower back of the brain state and come back into the more like reasoning side of the mind, and you can make better decisions. Yeah. And like you can also, you know, have deeper capacity for intimacy and for connecting with people. I think like that's a big part as well.
Yes. I think that whenever we're in the turbulent state, like we focus again, like so much on what we need to do. And we think that that's the answer, right? It doesn't seem like sitting and feeling would be helpful because it's not directly making visible, measurable change on the thing that you're worried about, right? Mm-hmm. But you're the vehicle for your life, your body and your nervous system. There's no doing without you. And so if your computer is buggy, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to execute the functions until you go in there and get the bugs out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very well said, especially because we're all kind of trained to like do and produce and check things off a list, and doing something like pausing and feeling our feelings usually is seen as like, oh, I'm not doing anything, or like, that's a waste of time, or that's woo woo, or so many things. So many things. And I think adults don't have enough space to be able to feel and to be able to unleash in their feelings. Because, like, for example, if you go out in public and there's a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum at the grocery store, nobody bats an eye. But if I, as a 34-year-old woman, started throwing a tantrum at the grocery store, I would get
crazy.
Locked up.
Yeah. She's crazy. What's wrong with her? Yeah. Either you're either infantilized or you're dismissed in some grander and more painful way. I think even, I think a tantrum is a pretty big example, but even little things like singing to yourself or talking to yourself or stimming, like neurodivergent stimming, like these are all very natural ways that we release the potential energy and regulate ourselves. And, it's all sit still, be quiet, fall in line, behave like everyone else is behaving. Don't freak anyone out. Don't make weird faces, And so we just train ourselves to turn everything off.
Yeah.
And the turbulence builds and the turbulence builds until you're 30 years old and you have autoimmune problems and you can't digest anything because your digestive system has been off without blood flow for the whole time,
Yeah. That's wild. We're basically trained to freeze and fawn. Yeah. Containing everything in.
Yes. I mean, this can be a whole nother conversation that we have sometime, but I could go on and on about how the school system is set up to make workers not thinkers, and that Rockefeller quote or whatever, like, and the work week and everybody at the top expecting everybody at the bottom to never relax while they live lives of leisure. Like, it's not designed for us to be healthy. It's not designed for us to be happy. It's not designed for us to be sane. It's not designed for us to have space to do this processing that is very natural and normal and human, but also like vital, necessary to survive. I think that health epidemics will continue to rise until we learn this information and adopt it as a society.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we're meant to be doing a lot of the things that we're doing right now, all the way down to even connecting how we are now. I love it and I'm grateful, but we're not supposed to be doing this. We're supposed to be sitting in person right now, and we're not supposed to be recording it. Like,
certainly not. No. I know. It's wild. Sometimes I really love it. Like I love that I had the opportunity to meet you in a world like this because I wouldn't have otherwise. But I don't know. I think people often talk about it like it's this either or thing, right? Like either you have to love everything about technology and modern life, or you have to reject all of it and go be a trad wife and, make sourdough bread with your pregnant belly and your bare feet. But like, I think that there's room for both, right? obviously we're here, we're using this to have a conversation about people feeling better and being happier, so it's complex.
Yeah, it's super complex.
There's beauty, there's horror. That's life, baby.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the brakes and accelerators
oh yes
concept
yeah
from Emily Nagoski?
Oh, I love our tangents. Yes.
Me too.
Yeah. But you're very good at keeping me on the trail. So yeah, Emily, is it Nagoski?
I actually don't know how to properly pronounce it. I say Nagoski.
Yeah, okay. So Emily Nagoski wrote Come As You Are. Love that book. And for anybody who couldn't quite see the cover image, it is a bag. It's a pocketbook. Yes.
Looks like a
but
coin
it's,
thing.
It's got a Georgia O'Keeffe thing going on. And then she also wrote a book called Burnout, which I have not read, but I was very impressed by her nervous system work in Come As You Are. That I would recommend Burnout just based on that. But yeah, she talks about this concept of accelerators and brakes. And in Come As You Are, she's talking about it in the context of sexuality, female sexuality, in particular being like the accelerator and brakes would be like, are you turned on or are you turned off? But that could apply to lots of things, right? Like it's are we turned on would fall into the same pool as relaxed, playful, curious, able to enjoy, be in the moment, peace, ease. And then the breaks would be stress, anxiety, frustration, irritability, like all the emotions we don't want, What I wrote in my notes here about this is getting out of the idea of right versus wrong, because I think that a lot of times if someone might hear this accelerator brake concept and they think, oh, well, I just need to figure out how to keep my accelerator on all the time.
That sounds exhausting.
I know. And it's really not about that. It's about like, I think that there's an important piece of like honoring your breaks or just like recognizing them. Like, oh, I see that I have a break coming up. Like, what do I need right now? If you're feeling some type of way, what do you need in that moment? Disgust is telling us about something that we need to get away from to keep ourselves safe and healthy. Anger is to let us know that somebody has violated our boundaries,
Yeah.
Sadness lets us know that like we were connected to something and that we lost, So they all have a purpose, but if we're too busy trying to fix them and push them away, we're gonna miss that, and we're not gonna go through the integration process. We're gonna keep doing the push it to the side thing so that the turbulence keeps building. I think so much of nervous system healing is like unlearning the idea of right and wrong altogether and just like listening, letting your body be the guide, listening to your innate intelligence, which again, like can be tricky if you have inherited trauma, but that doesn't mean that you don't have any innate intelligence or that there's not any value to be had from the responses, the nervous system responses you're experiencing that you don't like or want to change.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And how much of that unlearning from right and wrong and coming back to your innate intelligence do you think comes from kind of like the very nature of nervous system practices, or to kind of get you to that place where you are kind of in like a meditative state, where you kind of connect to this part of you that is not stuck in everything that life is throwing at you, but is instead like taking a step back and witnessing it all and observing it all?
Yeah. I think sometimes in order to in order to do the experiencing process, we do need to be able to take a little bit of a step back from it, right? Instead of being all caught up in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, yeah, I agree. I think that getting out of the burning building, doing the nervous system exercises is part of that. So you had mentioned like the little bit of resistance that I'm sure a lot of people feel whenever they're all freaking out and I'm like, tap on your forehead, and they're like, girl, I don't want to tap on my forehead right now. But you're not able to listen to your nervous system whenever you're in that state. You're not able to hear that wise voice inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're being like almost like dragged around. I sort of pictured like one of those tin cans on the back of a car attached to a string, you know, like you're just kind of like flopping around behind a car that's pulling you instead of driving the car.
Yeah. So when was the first time that you had an experience where you got into that dropped in meditative state, and how did that moment change your life? Or how did that moment lead to you being here right now with the kind of work that you do?
Such a great question. I don't know if I can trace it back to like one specific instance, because I feel like my ability to tap into that state has been gradual.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, it was like learning a new skill. Like I wasn't great at it at first.
Yeah.
Definitely like reading Peter Levine's work, Waking the Tiger, helped me understand it. And we wrote this in our notes from our previous conversation. Like we talked about getting out of the burning building, but there's also something to be said in some cases for understanding before you like dive into it.
Yeah, like doing the reading or even doing the talk therapy, like and learning things about why you are the way that you are can be very helpful. It can create a lot of safety to be able to then go into the body and feel
exactly,
the feels.
Because
yeah,
I think that I had been unconsciously, implicitly avoiding my feelings without realizing it. And then once I realized how the nervous system works and what that looks like, and recognizing that in myself, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to feel these feelings, and it's gonna suck. And let's experiment with like how to get there. And I know when it starts to suck, I'm doing something right, I wouldn't have that kind of resilience. Like otherwise I would have been like, no, this sucks. This is not right. This can't be right. This can't be right. Because I feel like I'm dying. But it's because I felt like I was dying at some point in time, and I wasn't ready to deal with it. So I got to deal with it at some point. And I had the courage to do that because I had that context of understanding and had done the talk therapy and the CBT. And I was like, okay, I know I don't believe this thing anymore, but my body still says be scared of it. And so I got to figure out how to get body and brain on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is not known enough, because I myself have experienced like, the only way I can describe it is like emotional gaslighting from coaches, from, even just content online. I think that it's very important to get them both on the same page because, for example, a lot of affirmation work will just tell you like, oh yeah, just keep repeating this affirmation. Like just keep doing it. Listen to it on repeat every day and you'll be fine. And I found myself like maybe about 2 years ago where I was like, okay, my brain believes this one thing, but my body clearly believes something else. Like there are two different worlds going on here. And like, this is not working.
It's dangerous too, because in that case, if you hear an affirmation, it's about the feeling, right? So if you hear the affirmation, I am strong, and your body cringes at that because you, on some level, don't believe you're strong, or the idea of being strong brings up something negative in you. You might be sitting there trying to convince yourself, I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong. And you're just reinforcing the pattern of feeling bad when you hear the word suggestion that you're strong,
Yeah. Yeah, so then listening to the affirmations can be harmful. I've never thought
In
of it
some
that way.
cases.
Yeah.
You have to believe what you're saying. So if you're not feeling great, I'm not feeling great right now, but I trust that I'm going to be okay at some point in the future. Like, that's a realistic affirmation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people aren't willing to start there, right? They want to start with like, I am a goddess, you know? And like,
I am a millionaire.
and you fucking are, you know, like you really are. Can I say that on this podcast? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. You are a goddess, and I believe that, but it's like, meet yourself where you're at the end of the day. Meet yourself where you're at, you know, forget right, wrong, forget what this coach or this doctor or this teacher, and I'm using these people specifically, these authority figures, forget what this authority figure told you. Meet yourself where you're at, and you know what's true about you. So if it's true for you that you hear that and it makes you go, ooh, I don't feel right about that, it doesn't mean that that person doesn't have anything valuable to say or that it's black and white about who's right and who's wrong. But what it means is, like, for you, that's giving something no, you know, and you can explore why that is.
Mm-hmm. It kind of goes back to the whole thing you mentioned about going back to your own internal wisdom. And I do think it's a huge, I mean, I don't know if this is a tangent, maybe it is. I think it's a huge red flag when a coach, or maybe therapists do this too. I haven't experienced one, but if a coach tells you like, oh, I have the answers, here's what you need to do, rather than like a big green flag. Is that the opposite of red flag? Green, white? Mm-hmm. A big green flag for me is when a coach helps you get to your own answers and your own inner wisdom, rather than positioning themselves as the person that knows what you need to do.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, even if they did know what you need to do, I used to coach on weight loss, right? And I worked for a corporation, and we had this like program that we helped coach people through. And so I could have, as a coach, been like, you just need to do this day, and this week, you know, you eat this or whatever. There's a reason why that doesn't work for people. It's because people don't fucking like being told what to do. You know, nobody likes being bossed around or infantilized. Some people might think they want to be told what to do because they think it will be easier for them. But the part of you that has wanted to individuate since you were 2 years old is going to resist that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever there's a tangle, whenever there's dissonance, whenever there's ambivalence, like part of me wants this and part of me doesn't think it will work or feels attached to this thing that feels opposite of it, instead of being like, just shut the fuck up on the thing that's like in your way and get over it and focus only on this, like that's so dismissive. And what that says to the person, what that implies is like, this isn't important, doesn't matter, isn't smart, I know better than it, you don't, and ignore it. Ignore your feelings, ignore your thoughts, you know, more of that. Like you were saying, the difference, I think, in a really excellent coaching experience is like, what is that, you know, like, what do you love about eating chocolate every day? How do you feel when you eat chocolate? Oh, I see that you want more like peace and joy in your life. Like, let's talk about peace and joy in your life, you know, instead of just saying, forget about the chocolate. Don't eat the chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. I wonder too, like how much of that triggers our old, like, you know, when we're children, we're like wild and free. And then we go to school and we're told what to do and we're squished into boxes because like when a coach is telling you what to do, you're not, in my opinion, you're not coaching, you're being a teacher. I think those are like two completely distinct things. Yeah. So I wonder how much of it is triggering that.
That's such a good point. Yeah. It isn't coaching at that point. It's, and it's not just teaching either, right? Because teaching would be like, here's the information. Learn it. But this is like, it's dictatorial. at the end of the day, isn't it? It's a little bit of a power trip. It's a little bit like, I am God. I am guru cult leader. You must do as I say, or else be kicked out of my cult. It gives me the ick.
Do you ever, as a coach yourself, struggle with the kind of like conversations that are happening online about, you know, how many coaches there are out there who are not ethical because it's not regulated? And a lot of people are, I feel like since 2020, there's been like a big boom of like more people coaching because everyone was locked down and realized they wanted to start their own business. And yeah, I just wonder if you ever struggle with that, or how you hold that, how you react to that.
Yeah, it is tricky because I like the term coaching, and I feel a little bit protective of it. Like if somebody were to try to lump all coaches into one category and say coaches are all quacks and scammers and that's just that, I would have a huge issue with that, obviously, because there's so much nuance. But I don't at all deny that there are plenty of people out there who don't know what they're doing. I think there's also doctors and college educated people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But we have this bias in our society towards the college educated people where we're like more likely to trust them and validate what they have to say. There's something I think is really cool about unregulated industries like coaching is that, yes, there are people who are in there just trying to like do what they think is going to make them a quick and easy buck, which, by the way, like, good luck doing that in coaching.
Yeah.
There's no quick and easy bucks around here. Sorry, bro. Unless you're genuinely a manipulative cult leader. But like, I would say that, you know, oh, hold on. I lost my train of thought. Okay. There are some people who are going to be trying to just come in and make a quick buck, but then there's going to be dozens more people who inexperience themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like they became what they became because they were forged in the fire. Not I went and learned all the right things and got all the right degrees, and now I know the right thing to tell people, which smells a little bit more like what we were talking about earlier. But like, I know what it feels like to be where you're at right now. And I feel so compassionate for you in the place in life where you are right now that I just want to be there for you and hold you through it. And like, I know what will help because I've been there. And if you have questions, I can answer them, you know?
Yeah.
I think that, not to say that there aren't doctors and therapists and college educated people who have that experience. But from what I can observe, like anecdotally, there seem to be a little, maybe more of the soul people in the unregulated industries, more of the self-starters, a little bit more of the like, come hell or high water, I'm going to do this. Versus the like, well, I just needed to pick a major, and whenever I was a sophomore, this sounded pretty good. And now I talk to people and make a lot of money, and it's cool. Great. Yeah. Really satisfying job. Love it. Like, that's fine. But like, you know,
yeah,
I'm not drawn to that.
Yeah. A lot of coaches too, though, that I've met so far, they did pick something and they did major in something, and they didn't let their learning stop there. I think a lot of coaches, like, you have to love learning if you want to be a coach. Like, it's like a never ending learning journey. That could probably be said for any industry. I feel like no matter what your craft is, you can always learn. It's like you did go and you did learn the thing, but then you also allowed the experiences in your life to be kind of like your second university, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yes. That's such a good point. The distinction is not what industry somebody's in or how much education they have. It's like, are you curious? Are you committed to learning? Are you passionate? Or are you just here to check the box of being good at your career, doing something like acceptable, successful, trademark symbol,
Yeah. And again, just normalizing that that's like so understandable with how we live in our modern world, because like most of us
Yes.
are in that nervous system activated response, and like it feels like life or death to like, do I go and be a doctor or do I go and be a painter? Like, I'm going to go be a doctor so I can eat. Like that's unfortunately a lot of our choice is made from that fear space.
I was talking to a friend about this recently because we had been our conversation had been operating from this assumption that there are like creative, right-brained people and then like left-brained people who maybe don't have creative passions. And I was like, I actually disagree. Like, I think that everybody has something that they could be really passionate and excited and curious about, whether it's a creative, like artsy thing or something else. But most people just don't have access to that because they are living in this constant state of fight and flight and go, 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 do, 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 check the boxes, impress the people.
Yeah. Well, that was a tangent, kind of. We related it back to the nervous system there at the end.
Yeah. If you don't like tangents, don't listen to us. I mean.
So I have a couple of questions that I usually ask at the end. And the first one is, what does self-love mean to you?
I love that question. I think to me, self-love always comes back to getting out of that right, wrong, should mentality and into the self-trust. And I think implied in that, in the self-trust, is gentleness, like witnessing anything and everything that could possibly come up within you with gentleness and compassion, and just being like, okay, like I see you, I have no ill will towards you. We'll get through this together.
That feels warm and fuzzy.
I love that question. Yeah. And I think it's an important one too, right? Because I think self-love is a term we throw around a lot without really knowing what we're talking about sometimes.
For sure. We make it mean that we've shaved our armpits. And then we make it mean that like, oh, that person has hairy armpits and they're in a woman's body or a feminine body. They don't care for themselves. They don't love themselves.
They let themselves go.
They let themselves go.
I'm like, I let myself go. I love that though. Like I let myself go.
I let myself free.
Go. Yes. Yeah. I am no longer bound by your chains. I let myself go up, out, away to all the places I like to be, with my hairy armpits and hairy legs and soft belly.
Yes.
Eat it.
Yes. Yes. I used to live in New York City, and New York City compared to LA, I feel like you see such a wider spectrum of humans and like human expression and how people decide to go out onto the streets. And I remember seeing this like beautiful person in like a dress that was like right below the knee. And maybe this person was a woman. I didn't ask for their pronouns, but this person had like really hairy legs. And I was like, yeah, if that person can rock that, I could do that too. Like, what's the big deal? It's just hair.
It's just hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't supposed, like, I remember reading a story online recently of a girl was babysitting a 7-year-old boy and she had hairy legs, and he goes, girls aren't supposed to have hairy legs. You should shave. And she's like,
7 years
if
old.
it's not supposed to be there, why did it grow there? And he stared off into space for a while and then asked to put on Spider-Man. She broke his brain. But yes, he had already like just internalized women are supposed to shave.
That's wild.
And he had never considered the possibility of why you why you would be expected to do something about something that naturally exists on your body.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's wild.
I know.
That at 7 we're already, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I remember sorry, I was going to say, I remember being like 8 or 9 and thinking I should start shaving my body hair. I remember sneaking to shave my body hair at 10 or 11. Shaved my arms whenever I was little.
Yeah.
It's whack. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I started shaving my legs when I was like 10, but I would like sneak my mom's razor. I didn't ask yet because you're 10.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm
no,
also
I was
German
absolutely
and
sneaking.
Greek. I'm also German and Greek, so I grew a lot of hair.
Yeah, you had that dark hair coming in and you were like, oh, beauty standards say no to that.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sending love to little Celia right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, what makes you feel the most grounded?
Ooh. What makes me feel the most grounded? 2 answers to this. I feel the most effortlessly grounded whenever I'm swimming in a natural body of water.
Mm.
I love swimming in a river, or like there's something about like the compression of being in water. But when it's a natural body of water and you look around at the trees and the sun in the sky, just like absolute happy place.
Yeah.
But my second answer, and maybe this is just because it's fresh on my mind from my coaching session yesterday, but we were doing a visualization exercise. And in the visualization exercise, I was a tree. And, you know, I've tapped into being a tree before. And I don't know, there's something about that, like just imagining my roots in the ground and like having this big, tall, sturdy trunk. Like even when I'm thinking about it right now, I'm not able to channel it in my body as powerfully as I am whenever I'm like really in that trance state. But it's remarkable the things that we can do whenever we really get our brains into that like special place, that regulated place. Yeah. Whenever I'm a tree, I'm hella grounded. I was specifically the tree from Pocahontas. Like with the grandma face, you know?
The willow?
Yes, yeah.
Ooh, yes. I love willows. They're so soft and wispy and strong at the same time. Yes. And majestic. Yeah, I'm like swaying. Yeah, I love that. I have a friend who, when she was little, her and her mom were having a conversation about reincarnation. And her mom told her that the journey of reincarnation, like the goal of it, is to eventually become a tree.
Yes.
As she was sharing this with me, she's like, I remember my mom saying that, and I was just like mind blown. I thought it was really cool. I wanted to share that with you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I can see how a tree would be like the final Pokemon form easily. Like,
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That does
big,
make sense.
Old.
Yeah.
Hold a lot of water. Yeah.
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 You've seen some shit through all your lives and you're ready to just be.
Plant. Yeah. No need to go anywhere.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So before I ask you where people can find you, I usually ask my guests at the end what their favorite part is about being a woman. But I know that you also have they, she pronouns. So I'm also curious what your favorite part is about being gender fluid as well.
Ooh, I love this. And I love that it's a 2-part question because I do feel like I really identify with womanhood, but I also identify with something outside of womanhood, androgyny, gender fluidity. And they feel like different parts of myself. Like this is going to be a Gemini as hell answer. But yeah, my favorite part about being a woman is my capacity to feel deeply. And I don't mean to imply that men can't feel deeply. I do think that's a dangerous implication, actually. But, you know, even if you think about like just ancient symbology, like women are more associated with like water and earth and like the nurturing elements, and there's a softness. There's the gentleness, the meeting any and all part of you with gentleness, right? I feel that when I think about womanhood and our ability to feel things so deeply and feel for other people, a superpower. But my favorite thing about being non-binary is freedom. Yeah. Like, I think especially we started this episode talking about the boxes that women are expected to fit into, right? And so women can shed those boxes and be women. But for me, shedding those boxes and being non-binary or recognizing that I was non-binary were something that happened hand in hand. It was very much like, if I were to explore the possibility of not being 1000% woman, what would be the first boxes I would want to throw out, you know? And then just going from there and on my gender exploration and finding what felt right. And absolutely, hairy armpits were top of the list. Can't be bothered. Wearing less makeup, you know, wearing men's clothes. Growing up, I was definitely like, if I tried to dress in a relaxed way, you know, there was commentary. So just being like, yeah, I shop in the men's section and I cut my own hair and I don't feel pressure to be pretty. I feel like my purpose is more it's more than how I look, which again, not explicitly true for women, but definitely like a sociocultural message that is hard to shed sometimes. Yeah.
I love your haircut, by the way. I didn't know that you do it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Anytime someone compliments me, I'm like, I fooled them.
Yeah. Isn't it weird too, though, how we have certain clothes that are like, quote unquote, for women and quote unquote for men? It's like,
yes,
I've thought of this concept a lot of if like, let's say I had a 5-year-old son and he wanted to wear a skirt to school, and just thinking of like how weird it is that would be a problem when it's literally just a piece of fabric hanging on his body. It's so weird if you think about it. We make weird. So much meaning out of a piece of fabric or a color even sometimes.
Oh yeah.
It's so weird.
And then not to mention all the weird little phrases they put on little boys and little girls t-shirts, you know.
Oh, I've never paid attention to that.
Oh gosh, if you go into like the children's section at Target, you'll see little boys t-shirts that say like, I'm brave, or I'm a ladies' man, or something like that. And like little girls t-shirts that are like, sweet, demure.
Oh,
I'm pretty, she's daddy's little girl. Like, I don't know, just like the vibes are very
I just threw up in my mouth.
Yeah. It's the gender boxing starts happening so young.
Yeah, wild. Okay, so did you want to add another thought?
No, I was going to suggest that we add something else to the end so we don't land on something so sad.
Well, I was going to ask where people can find you, and if you want to add anything, like any closing thoughts, feel free to add that on.
Yes, closing thoughts. Let's see. My closing thoughts would be that completing the cycle might look different for every person. You might need to start by talking about it and understanding it, or you might need to start by getting yourself out of the burning building and regulating your nervous system so that you can think clearly and understand what's going on. And if you find yourself in the latter camp where you know what you need to do and want to do, and the next steps you want to take to fulfill your creative vision or start your career or achieve some sort of goal, and your body is scared, anxious, you're choking up, you can't get the words out, you can't seem to get yourself to start, you're procrastinating, I can help. That's where I come in. I help people rewire their nervous systems so that their body and their conscious mind can match. And rather than telling you to just get over it and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I'm going to actually help those things feel easier and more natural to do through therapeutic memory reconsolidation and integrative coaching. So we can coach online. You can find my information at www.jendayton.com. And if you're in Austin, Texas, I also do in-person work and incorporate a little bit of supportive touch. I have a background as a body worker, so that work is super, super fun. So if you are in Austin, please do look me up. You can also find me on Instagram at Jen Dayton. One word, no punctuation.
Cool. And all of those links will be in the show notes or the caption, depending on if you're listening or watching on YouTube. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me, Celia. This was so fun. I love chatting with you.
Yes, this was really great. Thank you. And it went